today we'll be talking about the sociology of the medieval times in Britain. A quick overview: the lives of all the classes, rich and poor, were dominated by the feudal system. The jobs and occupations dictated the quality of life during the Middle Ages, as did health, hygiene, medicine, and doctors. The inventions of this time reflect the growing scientific and technical advances of the era. Here is a quick video to help with the overview.
In the Middle Ages, which cover approximately the period from the Norman invasion of Britain in 1066 to the end of the Wars of the Roses in 1485, England moved from being an almost exclusively agricultural, feudal society to a society on the threshold of creating an empire. Medieval society was based on the feudal system, which can be said to have come of age in England under William the Conqueror. He introduced the idea that all land was the property of the crown to dispose of as the king thought fit. Large tracts of countryside were granted to the king's supporters, who, in return, were bound to pay rent and offer their services when required. This usually meant supplying a certain number of armed knights in time of war. The lords would then rent their land to tenant farmers under similar conditions. These farmers were known as serfs, or villeins, and their lives were overshadowed by extreme hardship. A serf was effectively the property of the lord for whom he worked. He was not permitted to leave the land and go where he wished. If he tried to, he would be brought back and punished. Neither could he marry without the permission of the lord, which was also required should the serf wish to allow his son or daughter to marry. On the death of the serf, an heir had to pay a tax to the lord before he could continue to farm, besides what was known as a heriot, often the best animal on the farm. On top of the burden of working his own land to feed his family, the serf had to spend about 3 days each week working on the land of his lord, a service rendered in lieu of rent, ploughing, sowing, harvesting, of course, but also repairing the manor house, building barns, and running errands to the local villages. A very time-consuming and tiring business.
So that was a quick video to go along with the overview. So life. Medieval life was dictated by wealth, power, and status in the feudal system. The feudal system was sustained by the rights and privileges given to the upper classes, and in most cases enacted by laws. Everything was a source of privilege for the nobles. The high-ranking nobles lived in castles with their knights and ladies. The peasants, including serfs and freemen, spent their life on a manor or in a village. Health and disease. The lives of everyone during the time period were subject to illness and disease. The underlying cause of many of the illnesses was due to lack of sanitation. Medieval doctors did not make this link until after the outbreak of the Black Death. The first outbreak of the Black Death swept across England in 1348 through 49. Sometimes it came by road, passing from village to village, sometimes by river, as in the East Midlands, or by ship, from the Low Countries, or from other affected areas. There were no antibiotics during this time period, and it was almost impossible to cure illness and disease without them, so once it spread into a village, it was very likely that the decent amount of the population of the village would be affected by this disease. Here's a map of how the Black Death spread. Woman. Throughout the Middle Ages, The place of woman in society was dictated by biblical texts. The women of the Middle Ages were totally dominated by the male members of the family. The women were expected to instantly obey not only their father, but other brothers and other male members of the family. Any unruly girls were beaten into submission, and disobedience was seen as a crime against religion. Peasant women had many domestic responsibilities, including caring for children, preparing food, tending livestock during the harvest. Women were expected to help their husbands in the fields so that as much work as possible could be done. Most marriages during this time were arranged by the woman's family.